we were at the Mayo Clinic a couple days ago, and we were in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and we went up to the North Shore, and we went up to, was it Ely? Then we cut across the state, because our main goal is I wanted to see the origin of the Mississippi, because the Mississippi flows on the western part of Tennessee in Memphis. So we got to go to Itasca, and up the road from Itasca, there was this really big fella with a big, big animal next to him, okay? And I got my picture taken with Paul Bunyan and Babe, and that was really a highlight. And then we sort of been tracking the Mississippi down, and we've just had a great time ministering people. And one of the things that I like to do when I travel, now I still practice acute care cardiology three days a week. Of course, not every month. In September and May, we usually go on the road and do ministry. And that's my wife, Sonia, back there. She really wanted to come here to Minnesota, because she is Scandinavian. She's Norwegian. And Minnesota has the highest population of Norwegians outside of Norway in the world. And God's opened up a door for us to go next May. A fella asked me to present the gospel in health up in Norway next May. So next May we're going to be going to Norway, and I was hoping to pick up a little bit of culture and some key words, okay? And we were in Moorhead and saw a boat in a Norwegian church in Moorhead. And that's where I popped a tire on my big wheel, and I had someone that was so kind named Bobby that came to help me change that. So we've been on the road now. This is our third week on the road. And I'll tell you, the best place I found in Minnesota to do ministry is the public library. The public library. Because almost all of the homeless in the larger cities use the public library in the daytime. It's a great place to do ministry. Of course, they wouldn't let us in the prisons, but that's another great place to do ministry, but in the public library. So it's great. So I do acute care cardiologists, and I send people for bypasses and stents and pacemakers. So I know a lot about the acute care medicine. I've been doing that for over nearly 35 years now, okay? And I also do the lifestyle medicine. I work with the Wildwood Health Institute that lives near my home in Chattanooga. They're right across the street, and I'm a consultant with them. And not too long ago, I was up with Black Hills, and I'm going to help Black Hills on Monday. And nowadays that we have all of this technology, you can be all sorts of places easily. This weekend, a couple things that I would like to accomplish here with you is I want to answer every one of your personal medical problems or issues that you want. I'm free. I have lots of experience, and I give a balanced approach. And I really believe that we should be our own, God should be our ultimate physician, and then we should ask him to direct our paths, like in Proverbs. Acknowledge me and I'm going to direct your paths. And then we use all of the people around us. He leads us to the right people to consult on our individual situation. And I consult with people from all around the world. They call me, and I had a lady a couple days, well, I guess yesterday. Where we were at yesterday, Sonia? We were in Minneapolis yesterday. St. Paul, Minneapolis, St. Paul yesterday, and a lady called me, and she was concerned about, her doctor said, you have to do this, this, and this. And she had atrial fibrillation. That's the most common abnormal rhythm in America. And she just wanted some advice. And she just wanted, and I said, listen, I'm not telling you what to do, but God, you and God's got to work through. But here's the pros and cons of each of the decisions you might need to make. There's no right or wrong as long as you're with Jesus, because he's the one that heals us permanently. And if you believe the Word of God, which I do, and we're going to talk a lot about this tomorrow, about the Word of God and how the Word of God itself changes our physiology. And the science is just now catching up to that. how our DNA turns on and off certain genes that improve our health when we have rest, when we have a Sabbath rest, when we serve. We're now, the science is finally catching up a little bit. It'll never catch up totally because our bodies are just too complicated. And modern medicine is great for treating emergencies, okay, for helping people with parts wear out, like glasses and hearing aids and cataracts and things like that, joints that need replacement. We're good for things like that. We're also good for people that don't want to do lifestyle changes. I'm talking to the choir here, but many times I'll be talking to people that they don't want to give up cigarettes, they don't want to exercise an hour a day, they don't want to eat better, and yet they still have big problems. So everything that we talk about is about risk and benefits, and even if they don't want to change their ways at lifestyle, I said, listen, can I introduce you to a healing force that can heal us in the end? And no one, it's a great place when people are having serious medical problems or serious chronic illness problems to introduce the gospel. And I don't know if you've noticed it, but there's a big deal going on right now with chronic disease. Chronic disease. And I'm going to talk a lot about that tomorrow. But I know everyone has had a tough week. So this weekend, feel free to ask any questions. I'm also going to leave a 7-week Bible study that the church can do themselves. It goes through, it's sort of similar to a New Start program, except it centers around worship as the driving power to make changes. It's hard to remember to drink water every day, but when you ask the Holy Spirit to help you, it's going to be easier. Sometimes it's harder to exercise. I find that probably the hardest thing that people, they'll take a vitamin D pill and they'll drink water, but to walk an hour a day, that's hard for some people. Or to get outside for just 15 minutes a day. Or even to eat vegetables. Sometimes that's very hard for people. So this program really brings the power of the Holy Spirit and worship as the key to health. Christ is really the key to health, because if you don't have that, then you're doing all of these things really for the wrong reasons. And he's going to bring each one of us along based on his plan for us. And sometimes we have to be patient too, because sometimes God will give us the power to overcome something and do something right away, and sometimes he takes some time, right? Sometimes everything doesn't happen all at once. So we have to be a little bit patient at times. So we're going to be talking about a lot of chronic disease. So I'm going to leave you a Bible study that you can do as a church. And a lot of the churches I go to, after they've done it on a Wednesday or whenever their prayer meeting is, they go through it for 7 weeks. And if they like it and they learn it, then they go out and invite 2 or 3 of their friends to come to their house. They say, hey, you want to get off of medicine? You want to lose a little weight? You want to bring down your blood pressure? You want to lower your risk of heart attack? You want to improve your memory? Come to my house for 7 weeks. I'm going to put in this video by this doctor that's done this for years. You're going to watch this video, and then we're going to do this for 7 weeks. And of course, it talks about the science of worship. And at the end of that time, hopefully a friendship will be developed. And you can say, hey, listen, would you like to learn more about this? I have a great church to bring you to if you're interested in. So that I'm going to leave that with you, and I brought that with you, and I'll talk more about that tomorrow. Lastly, I found out with the advent of the media, is anyone into all the cell phone and social media and things of that nature? Well, nowadays with social media, you can be everywhere all the time. So my home church is now in eastern Kentucky, and they're praying for this community specifically today. They're praying for each one of you that you have better health, and we're also praying for your community that we can learn ways to reach them through improving our health. Chronic disease. We have a solution to chronic disease, and I'm going to present that this weekend. You already know what it is. Now I'm going to give you the science behind it and some strategies that you might reach your friends and neighbors. And remember, it's not whether people come into the church and fill the pews, even though that's nice. What we're called to do is plant seeds. The Holy Spirit is in charge of bringing the seeds in when it's time. So even though we don't see a lot of good right away, I put cards everywhere, and I put cards in different places. I do the social media on YouTubes, and I found out people can subscribe on YouTube and send it to their friends and neighbors. There's some churches that have a web page where they have a YouTube channel, and we provide them at Heartwise Ministries all the content they need. So we give them the television programs that we make, the radio, the YouTubes. They can use it all as if it was their church. And if they have a specific medical question, I even leave my phone number and my email that they can call me. So I'm going to leave that with you as well. So I want to be a continued resource to you. If you have a medical issue you might want to run by somebody or talk to someone else about that has some experience, I want to leave that as well. But there's many different ways we can spread the gospel. But my little home church in eastern Kentucky, there's only 4 or 5 people. It's very small, very small. In fact, the pastor there only makes it there every 3 or 4 weeks. Okay, so it's very small. So they do a lot of stuff on the internet, and the main thing that they can do right now is pray. And I can't tell you how valuable that is. If we can't do anything else, God has more power than any of us. So let's make sure we keep prayer life strong, and that is a very important part of ministry. So this evening, for a few minutes, as we warm up and get this weekend going, I want to talk to you about hypertension, a little bit about hypertension. I deal with hypertension as a cardiologist every single day. Hyper means high, right? Tension means pressure. So hypertension is pressure that's high on our blood vessels. And anytime you have blood vessels that go everywhere, and if you have pressure that's put on those blood pressures everywhere, if it goes on for a long time, if you have prolonged exposure to high blood pressure, bad things can happen. Well, why do we start here? Well, it's hard to believe that there's 8 billion people on Earth. Did you realize that? 8 billion, more or less? 1 billion of those 8 billion have high blood pressure. Half of them don't even know they have it. So this is a chronic disease that's a risk factor for many of the things that people are dying from. And if we could just let people know if they have high blood pressure and ways to treat it at an early age, we could prevent a lot of problems, a lot of deaths down the road. And hypertension is something that everyone can do. We can all get a blood pressure cuff, go to Walgreens or wherever and put a cuff around us, measure our blood pressure. There's lots of ways we can lower the blood pressure, and we can teach other people to do this as well. So, hypertension's a chronic disease that's very common. You all have heard of type 2 diabetes. That's another chronic disease. Being overweight's a chronic disease, now affecting 42% of all people. That's another way we can minister people, help them to manage their weight better, and we'll give you some keys to help reach the community with that as well. So I thought we'd start with hypertension because this is something that a lot of people have. We might have people that have hypertension in this room right now that don't even know it, that's having hidden damage. So we're going to talk about hypertension since it affects so many mentioned. So it's an important topic. I guess the most important reason, it's the #1 risk factor for death worldwide. Nearly 20 to 25% of all people that die have high blood pressure as the cause. Remember, when someone comes into the hospital with chest pain or any symptom, any need, I always want to know why it's happening. Why it's happening. Well, you have a stroke. Well, why did it happen? You had a heart attack. Why did it happen? Unfortunately, our modern medicine usually just treats the symptom and doesn't get at the reason why. having the chronic disease, you have the chronic disease and the side effects of the medications, and before that you have more than one problem. It just doesn't make sense. Well, nowadays our country is wisening up. We're going to talk about this tomorrow. We can't afford chronic disease much longer. We can't afford it. Did you know that the number one industry in America right now is the healthcare industry? We don't make cars anymore. We don't grow corn. I saw a lot of corn growing. We don't grow things. We don't make things anymore. We put pacemakers in, do bypasses, give people medications, do bariatric surgeries, have a bunch of commercials. That's the industry. It's sad, but it's taking up about 18 to 19% of all the money that's spent. 1 in 7 people now work for the healthcare industry. So, of course, those people don't want the healthcare industry. They want the system to continue, but the system is not working. The system is not how God designed us to live. But so high blood pressure, number one risk factor, it's a chronic disease. It's a cause of about 18% of all deaths in the United States. It affects about 22% of the world's population. 75 million in the United States have high blood pressure. After age 60, I'm over 60, I'm 62 now. After the age of 60, 65% of us will get it. Some of us just get it because of aging. The blood vessels get old and they get stiff. Has anyone left something outside and seen it rust? Well, sometimes in the insides of our bodies, the blood vessels sort of get rusty. We call that oxidation, calcifications. They get stiff. And when they get stiff, they're not as pliable. And when they're not as pliable, the blood pressure goes up. So after age 60, 65% of it will have it. Now, just because we have it doesn't mean we can't bring it down and get it to go away. There's lots of things we can do for stiff blood vessels to lower our blood pressure so they're not as stiff. Now, we're not taught about that as much, but there's lots of things we can do. But the first thing I want to put in our brains today is that blood pressure is a problem. We need to check our blood pressures, okay? We need to do it correctly when we're sitting down for 15 minutes, taking deep breaths, no stimulants, with a blood pressure cuff that fits our arm well, with the blood pressure arm about the size of the heart. Measure your blood pressure after you breathe deeply. That's a true blood pressure. Many times when you go to the doctor's office, you're nervous. So what's it going to be? It's going to be high. Well, that's situational high blood pressure. That's natural. If I do like this, your blood pressure is temporarily going to go up. But if you take some deep breaths, it's going to go back down. So that's not high blood pressure. That's the way we're supposed to live. But so blood pressure that's high is high all the time. So one blood pressure at the office doesn't mean much. So I tell people to take your blood pressure at home when you're nice and relaxed. That's your true blood pressure. Because when you go in, you don't want to, the doctor, he's going to see your blood pressure. He says, it's high. The rules are, I have to give you medicine. I give you medicine and it's not really high. When you go home, it goes low. Then you get up and you go boom, you fall down and you break your hip. What good is that, right? I've seen that happen too many times. Or a person that doesn't even have high blood pressure get on a pill, and guess what? The pill causes a bad side effect. So if you think you have high blood pressure, you want to measure it numerous times to make sure that you have it. Temporary remember, blood pressure becomes a problem if it goes on year after year after year after year. For a short period of time, usually it's not a problem. So 50% of all people with hypertension, of those 1 billion people on the world that have it, 500 million don't even know they have it. So they're walking around with high blood pressure. We call that the hidden killer. Because you might not even know you have it for 20 or 30 years until something wears out. You have a heart attack because it puts pressure on the blood pressures in the heart. You have an aneurysm that bursts. You have problems with your kidneys. It's a big problem. So when we talk about hypertension, the high blood pressure, let's talk about all the things that it leads to. It can lead to heart attacks because it puts pressure on the blood vessels. It can cause heart failure. If the heart has to pump against pressure all the time, if, the first 5, 10, 15, 20 years, the heart says, I can do this. It gets really thick because if you use a muscle a lot, it gets thick. This fella here has big muscles, so I can tell he does a lot with his arms. But if he did too much of it, he'd wear them out, and then it would get tired. The heart does that too. After a while, it gets tired, and when it gets tired, it wears out. It causes what we call heart failure. The heart is not doing its job, that it's failing because it had to work so hard earlier in life. It just wore itself out. Aneurysms, that's weak spot in blood vessels because of all that pressure. You've heard of aneurysms. We get them in the abdomen, we get them in the heart, we get them in the brain. Any blood vessel can have an aneurysm. And remember, blood pressure, the blood vessels go to every organ. So every organ in the body can be affected by high blood pressure. Strokes, it's a frequent cause of stroke, having high blood pressure. Kidney failure, dialysis, vision loss. And here's one, peripheral vascular disease. That's damage to the blood vessels in the legs. You might notice that when you walk, you have cramp in the back of your leg. That's a sign that the leg arteries have been damaged. So a lot of times when I get a hold of a patient, unfortunately, they've had these problems already develop. So they're more interested in lowering their blood pressure. But sometimes I can catch people at a younger age that are very interested. And the people I think that really, the women are better than the men. The men sometimes, they ignore it. I'm not worried. But occasionally I'll get a man in and he'll say, listen, my doctor sent me in here because he thinks I have vascular disease. I go, oh, vascular disease. He says, yes. I said, well, he says, well, I'm not able to perform my role as a man as well. I go, oh. He says, so you've not had a heart attack, heart failure, aneurysm, stroke, kidney failure, vision loss? No. I'm just not able to do, to do that. And I said, well, are you interested in lowering your blood pressure since it's high? Oh, yeah, I'm interested. Then I start teaching them. Well, here's all the things that we can do to lower blood pressure. Here's the things we can eliminate. Here are the natural things. And I'll tell you, 8 out of 10 times when they come back and their blood pressure is now lowered just because they're walking and eating better and doing all of these things. Maybe they gave up some things that were raising their blood pressure, like Red Bull. Red Bull really shoots the blood pressure up, by the way. And I have a lot of people that really like to drink Red Bull. But it shoots the blood pressure high. But when they come back and I say, well, how's things going? He goes, everything's going good. What's your blood pressure? 120/80. I go, good. And that keeps them on the path, okay? So in working with people, you have to find the common need. So when people present in health ministry, in health evangelism, you have to first identify what their need is. Some people have symptoms. Some people don't even know they have a need. But one of the needs a lot of people have that they don't realize they have is high blood pressure. That's one place we can meet their needs at, is treating their blood pressure. So let's talk about what is hypertension. Well, hypertension is a number, and it's been defined different ways, but the American Heart Association defines it as a number of 120/80. The top number is the pressure that the heart generates when it first pumps. That's called the systolic pressure, okay? We want it to be 120 or below, and then the bottom number is when everything relaxes. That's called the diastolic pressure. We want it to be 80 or below. Well, I start to be a little bit concerned when it gets to 140/90. I say, listen, I check, usually when it gets started, I say, listen, you might have high blood pressure. Check it at home. They come back and it's consistently above 140/90. I said, listen, let me check all your organs and see if anything's been damaged. So I check the organs, see if they have damaged kidneys, damaged heart, damaged eyes. Ask them about their legs, whether they hurt. Ask them about how everything else is going. And then I say, listen, right now we have some time. Here's some lifestyle things you can do to bring down your blood pressure. And we start going down the list. Some people say, no, I don't want to do any of this. And I'm going to tell you some of the lifestyle things before we go today. Some people say, no, I don't want to do that, Dr. MARCUM. I don't want to do any of that. Just give me the pill. So I give them the pill. Okay, if they won't do anything, I'd rather have it lower than have a stroke or heart attack. Okay, so some people, believe it or not, a large number of people will not walk an hour a day. They won't go towards a plant-based diet. They won't drink water. They won't go to bed earlier at night. They won't give up Red Bull, nicotine, or alcohol, or some of the things they need to do to lower the blood pressure. But I still want to meet their needs. But I have a relationship with them, and I can start working with them. And I said, and sooner or later I said, do you want to do this the rest of your life or have a side effect? I know something that can heal you permanently, that can help you maybe want to do these things. Do you want to learn about that? And that opens up the doors for spiritual things. So blood pressure has to be checked over time. Now, if a person's like 160 over 100, they have bad headaches, that they're starting to have an organ damage in their kidneys or their hearts, I say we have to do something right now. We cannot wait on lifestyle changes. I have to bring the blood pressure down now. Here's a medication, but you might not have to be on it forever. If you start doing these things to lower your blood pressure, I'll be happy to take you off of it. So I offer them, but if it's high and their organs are starting to be damaged, I can't let them have a stroke. I can't let them have a heart attack. I have to do something right now. And I'm never quite sure when they leave whether they're going to do the things that I suggest their lifestyle. I'm never even sure they're going to even take a pill, to be honest with you. But you try to tell them the importance of this chronic disease and what it could lead to. How many here in this room have had their blood pressure checked this year? Oh, good. Okay. Well, that's something that this church can do for their community. We can easily go out and say, listen, we're going to check your blood pressure for free. We're going to show you how to do it because we want to see if that's a need you might have. And if your blood pressure is high, we're going to give you a bunch of options to bring down your blood pressure naturally. We can have this. We can meet your need this way. And that's what we can do with each of the chronic disease. You want to lose some weight? Well, hey, listen, our church has some ways you can lose some weight without taking some pills. Would you be interested in looking at it? How about learning how to exercise? Would you like to do that? We can do these things. We want to meet your needs so you're not having this chronic disease that's going to plague your life forever, and it could eventually lead to something really serious happening. So this disease, hypertension, has been around for many years. A lot of the diseases that we have today in modern medicine in the world we live in have been created by people, okay? And I guess one of the best examples of that is the field of psychiatry, okay? Psychiatry, for years and years, they did not treat everybody with medications. They didn't do that, okay? Then about in the 60s and 70s, the psychiatrist said, listen, everyone's making a lot of money off pills. We need to have pills. So then the first one was the anxiety pills. Oh, everyone gets Valium. They don't talk about any other thing. And Valium, of course, is addictive, okay? And then everyone with depression, most depression is not serious enough to need a medication. But everyone just wants to put everyone on a medicine. But remember, the antidepressant medicines do not change the neurotransmitters in the brain. But you can do that naturally by vitamin D, a diet, exercise, certain supplements with tryptophan in it. You can bring those neurochemicals up, and you might not need to take something that just increases how long they stay away, how long they stay in the brain in the synapse area and cause all sorts of other side effects. They don't tell you that. Then, of course, they put you on these medicines for years and years, and we're just finding out the medicines for attention deficit disorder. What are you going to do? Take that the rest of your life? We just, it's just not a long-term solution. So we create another chronic disease, which is a dependence on a medication that we might not even need. We've done that with a lot of diseases so far, instead of getting at natural ways, biblical ways to treat these diseases. So hypertension at one point, remember, it hasn't been around forever. They called this hard pulse disease, because they would feel the pulse in the arm, and they would feel it like really bounding, just a big bounding pulse. And people that have really high blood pressure, when I check their blood pressure, you can feel it. I mean, when it's, and the highest blood pressure that I've read about was a blood pressure of 400. 400. And that was in a weightlifter temporarily. He was lifting a lot of weight and he grunted. Whenever you do heavy grunting or straining, your blood pressure really does surge. So you have to be careful when you go, you know, your blood pressure is going to go really high. And if you already have high blood pressure, that could make it go too high. I can't tell you how many people that I said, well, when did your aneurysm finally become a problem? Well, I was out working in the field and I was lifting something that was way too heavy for me. I wasn't lifting correctly and I was grunting hard, you know, and that's when all that pressure finally caused the problem. So they call this hard pulse disease for now. And look at that fellow there. He's not too happy with anything, okay? He's not happy at all. He says, I have a hard pulse disease. The doctor, I don't know what he's doing, but he's doing what they call breathing a vein. This will still lower blood pressure, and what they would just drain your blood from you. And if I drain your blood from you or you're bleeding, your blood pressure will go down. But they found out that's not a good solution because you need blood, because you don't want to get anemic. So that wasn't a long-term solution. Now he was draining him from the arm, so he was vein letting him, where he put something in the vein and drained it. Another way you can do it is put leeches on you. You know, leeches will suck blood out of you too, right? Ticks would do the same thing, okay? All the same thing, because it sucks blood out of the circulation. That will lower blood pressure. But that wasn't a great way to treat high blood pressure, but they didn't call it high blood pressure then. They called it hard pulse disease. Other things that they did, they found out that if you could decrease your anger, if you could cut back on intercourse, wine, meat, pastry, certain foods, that will also lower your blood pressure. Now, some of that even works today. Less anger, deep breathing, cutting back on alcohol. We know alcohol makes blood pressure go up. We know that animals, meat-based products, make blood pressure goes up. Rich pastries and food, especially food with too much salt in it, that makes blood pressure go up. So some of those treatments they used for hard blood actually do. Increased consumption of spinach and vinegar. Well, we know that green foods have nitrates. Nitrates in the body get converted to nitric oxide, which makes the arteries bigger. So eating greens, vegetables, is still an effective way to lower blood pressure. And some people with a combination of high blood pressure and angina and chest pain when they walk, I'll have them eat something like spinach or arugula, get a handful of it 3 times a day and chew it up and eat it, just to make the nitrates and nitric oxide. Now, nitric oxide is a gas, so we can't measure the gas. They'll do that 3 times a day, not only to lower blood pressure, but to help angina. You've heard of nitroglycerin pills. Doing that is even more effective than taking a nitroglycerin pill. Okay. We need more sound. Okay. Well, as we move forward with this story of hypertension and the chronic disease and why it's so important, this fella here was named William Harvey. And this wasn't that many years ago, 1578, 1657. So that was, not that long ago that he finally figured out that the blood would circulate in the body from the heart. We didn't even know before then that blood flowed from the heart and went everywhere. So we didn't know that. So he was the one that really opened up this circulation issue with this. So I think the history of high blood pressure, just like the history of any disease, is interesting to know. How it's come about, how the controversies have existed, because this is so important, because almost all of the chronic diseases that you're hearing the Health and Human Secretary talk about. You heard of R.F. Kennedy, right? We've heard of him. He's trying to get control of this situation because it's getting so expensive. Especially it's going to get expensive on our younger kids. We can't afford to have 1 in 17 with autism. with attention deficit disorder, all the obesity, all the medications. We can't afford this. He's trying to clean up all of the foods. But in the history of chronic diseases, they sort of all have an interesting history, and they sort of all, in some ways, follow similar patterns. History is very useful. History seems to repeat itself. And I've been loving the history of Minnesota that I've learned about, okay? I learned yesterday when I was down in St. Paul about this guy named Hill. Has anyone heard of the guy named Hill that did the Northern Railway? He was incredible about his forethought of how he moved goods. And all of a sudden the railway wasn't working out, so he figured, well, let me find some other ways with trains to make some money. Oh, we found some iron ore over in Hibbing in those fields, and I got to visit those and haul them over to Duluth. Have anyone ever been over to Duluth? Do you see that bridge there? That is a fascinating bridge, and how they brought the iron ore over to Duluth, and how Duluth shipped it over to the places that refined it and turned it into steel. I mean, it's just very interesting. But the same thing with medicine. Any industry has a history. And you can learn much about how things develop through their history. Well, Stephen Hales recorded the first blood pressure back in 1733. Now, that wasn't that long ago, was it? Now, that is not his real hair, by the way. That is a wig. Now, we don't do that often anymore. We don't wear wigs, even though some of us might need some hair products, like myself. But he figured out, and he first measured blood pressure in a horse. So he stuck something in the horse, they saw the pressure coming up, he figured it out in the horse. But that wasn't that long ago that he first recorded that this Harvey, who figured out that there was circulation, figured out that there was a pressure in it. So they did figure out there's higher pressure in the arteries, lower pressure in the veins, so they started figuring all this out. They didn't even know it was causing damage until about 1844. What an interesting year in history. 1844. So I'm thinking about, I've written 5 books before, and I'm thinking about writing a book about 1844, because so many interesting things happened in the world in 1844. Well, Richard Bright, that's that fellow there, he correlated this high blood pressure that was found 100 years earlier with problems with the kidneys. And they started calling high blood pressure related to kidneys as Bright's disease. And many of the diseases, they didn't even know what it was when it first started, but chronic diseases progressed over years and years and years and years, and finally some people quantify it and qualify it, and then they decide arbitrarily how to treat it. Okay, and the same is with every chronic disease, whether it be type 2 diabetes, obesity, hypertension, all of the chronic diseases, mental health problems, all the chronic diseases seem to have the same patterns. Then the fellow there, that good looking fellow there, Scipione Riviraggi, this is nearly 52 years later. He invented this thing, and in medicine we make these big names, a sphygmomanometer. That's just a blood pressure cuff. Come on. You know, they call it a sphygmomanometer. That's what they named it. But he invented that in 1896. 1896. That wasn't that long ago. But remember, people had high blood pressure before that, right? But it was never recorded. Finally, people started figuring out, but it took time. It took time to figure out this chronic disease, what it was about. But with anything, finally, in 1905, the fellow there on the far right is named Korsakoff. He figured out not only we could measure it, but we could hear sounds. And we listened to the sounds that would come and go when the cuff was inflated. And he figured out, well, we could listen to it and we could measure the blood pressure pretty easily. So now we're starting to define this chronic disease, which is plaguing so many people, which is a need people might have in our community that we don't even know they have it. Then we start defining it, but nothing really happens until money becomes involved. Isn't that interesting? Nothing really happens until money becomes involved. So when money starts taking a role,
all of a sudden people start getting all fired up about things. And there becomes lots of controversy. When money and power and medicine and people are involved, all of a sudden there's all sorts of issues that go on. So I was doing some research this week, and did you know that one of the earliest, has anyone heard of the drug company called Merck? Okay, before they really got big in the 40s and 50s, before they got into antibiotics, their first drug that they used to sell was cocaine. Cocaine was a very popular substance to put in medications for years, till about 1920. Almost everything had cocaine in it. Well, guess what cocaine did? Cocaine made your blood pressure go up. You know? And if that wasn't bad enough, Pfizer, have you heard of the company Pfizer? Their main product until about the 40s or 50s was morphine. They put morphine in it, you know, codeine and things like that. So for years they would put things in these medicines and it just didn't make sense and it would cause all sorts of things to happen. So the British Medical Journal talked about the sphygmomanometer. They wrote an article about this. And if you heard the term misinformation, well, here's what the British Medical Journal, probably the most prominent journal, said about the sphygmomanometer that Rich O'Ricci came up with. It says, we pauperize our senses and weaken our clinical acuity when we use this. So they spread that all around. They told everyone, this blood pressure is not a problem. So the big controversy happened. So these four guys, all their work over 100 years, they were marginalized. Until 1906, the insurance companies saw the importance, especially Northwestern Mutual. They said, hey, listen, these people that have been caused with high blood pressure, this heart pulse disease, they're falling over dead. They're costing us money. We're not going to insure them anymore. Then all of a sudden, the drug companies saying, listen, hey, listen, we have a way that we can make some money. We have something that we can do. Now we need to turn this into a disease. We need to make this into something. So about 1911, Mahoon and Frank coined the term essential hypertension. But it didn't stop there. In 1912, this is William Osler. He was probably the most prominent physician of that day. Remember, 1912, this is when they didn't have any medicines to treat anything. They did crazy stuff like put cocaine in medications, morphine in medications, things of that, all sorts of crazy things. He says, in this group of cases, this high blood pressure, it is well to recognize that the extra pressure in the blood vessels is a necessity. It's purely mechanical. Get it out of your heads, if possible, that this high blood pressure is a primary feature, and particularly the feature to treat. So he spread this around, and when all the journals and everyone wrote about it, and all the media outlets at the time picked up on it. They wrote about this over and over, and they blogged about it, and they put it on everything, the YouTubes, everywhere at the day and age. Oh, this blood pressure is stupid, it's nothing, we can't believe this, this is the expert. And these other guys in the past, they don't know what they're talking about. So this went on 1912, 1920s, 1930s, 1940s. They're really not doing much about it, except not insuring people, because that was costing money. Then all of a sudden, Franklin Roosevelt, he died from chronic hypertension. His blood pressure was so high, he burst an aneurysm. And he died from that. And everyone says, oh boy, he really had high blood pressure. We weren't doing anything about it. So it still took all these years to finally get all of this out of there. And finally said, well, let's start working on treatment for this disease. You know, in the 50s, we had a fellow that was out of, where was he out of? He was out of, I can't remember what school it was, but he finally figured out, listen, we have to do something about this high blood pressure in the 50s. That's about 70 years ago. So the early treatments, I think his name was Robinson, he said, let's have less sodium. And we still use that today, less sodium. But guess what our society kept doing? We kept getting more sodium in our bodies. In fact, the average American takes about 3,500 milligrams of sodium in their body a day. We don't need that much. Elephants can get by on 500. So we take some of us take 6 and 7 times. All of the processed foods, all the canned foods, all that has tons of sodium. The sodium raises the blood pressure. So less sodium is always an option. Then one of the early treatments that we use a little bit today, but not too much, it's called a sympathomectomy. We actually cut the nerves that cause high blood pressure. We call that today renal denervation. We cut the nerves to the kidneys. We don't do that in many people, but occasionally we do something that some people, we cannot control it. It's so dangerous that we have to do a procedure on it. But that was some of the early treatments. That didn't last. They came up with medicaments like sodium-thionate, reserpine, none of these medications, but hydralazine is still around today. So hydralazine was a medication that they originally used for malaria. Go figure, malaria. But they found out that when they gave it to the malaria patients, it also lowered their blood pressure because they were starting to do the vitals. So hydralazine is a medication that we still use today in the hospital. It survived the test of time.
What are the side effects of that medication?
Well, you name it, okay? It can cause a reflex tachycardia, it can cause rashes, it can cause lots of things, but almost every medication, every treatment, and we're going to talk about this as we go, every treatment causes side effects. So everyone has to decide which side effects do they want and how they want to treat their own condition. So hydralazine, it does have side effects, but not as many as others. The worst side effect of hydralazine is it causes a lupus-like reaction. Remember, anytime we put something in the body, the immune system can do something with it. And in some people, it causes sort of a joint pain rash. A little bit rare, but it's still possible. Then they came up with chlorothiazide, and this one really, people, when they came up with this one, it was during the 50s and 60s, people were loading down their foods with salt. We all figured out how to get fast foods and go to the store and get all this loaded in salt. Then the blood pressure started really going high. Chlorothiazide really just takes sodium out of the body. It's a diuretic. It takes salt out of the body. They didn't talk about, well, maybe we shouldn't eat as much salt. Just take this, they call it a pea pill, salt pill. But it also takes potassium out of your body, can get you dehydrated. But this is some of the early treatments of high blood pressure. So today's treatments, now we finally have sort of, through the years, so 50s, 60s, 70s, it's grown in treating this chronic disease, which we've known about for many years, but now they figured out, well, what's today's recommendations by the NIH, the National Institute of Health, American Heart Association, American College, everyone, today's treatment, the number one recommendation for the treatment is the one that people will not do the most, but they need to learn about, and that's lifestyle. Lifestyle can treat and lower hypertension in most of the cases. Most of the cases. Now there's some that's purely genetics, some that's caused by certain medical conditions. Sleep apnea is the most common cause I see. The second biggest medical condition that causes high blood pressure is obesity, because fat makes a chemical called aldosterone, which raises the blood pressure. The third most probably common causes of high blood pressure is inactivity. So those are some common ones that I see. Kidney disease causes the blood pressure to go high. Certain medications can cause the blood pressure to go high. Chronic pain causes the blood pressure to go high. That can also be not only physical pain, but I've seen mental pain make the blood pressure go high because it stresses people. If they have unresolved pains mentally, they make adrenaline, they make cortisol. Those chemicals make the blood pressure go high. So always, if you can get at the lifestyle cause, that's going to be your best bet at lowering your blood pressure. Then the second line is medications. And right now, there's lots of medications for blood pressure. And unfortunately, when you go to the physician or cardiologist, MD doctor, most of them focus on medications first. That should not be the way we're doing things. It hasn't been that way in the past. We should give patients the options and say, listen, here are your options. Your blood pressure is not that bad right now. Would you want to work on the lifestyle changes, or would you want to take the medicines? Unfortunately, we are in a society now that people want quick fixes. They want quick fixes for everything. We're in a society now that I'm afraid that people do not want to have truth. Just tell me, I want to do the easiest thing and have the happiest life. They don't want to hear truth. They don't usually think beyond today. They don't realize that this earth is not our home. We're just passing through. We're just going to make each day a good day, so in heaven we have eternity that's great. People don't think beyond what we're being programmed with, and this isn't an accident. This is all part of the cause of chronic disease. The cause of chronic disease goes way back to the controversy that we had in heaven, and how that's been passed down on our genetics and to our society. So there's real bad out there, evil out there that doesn't want us to think, doesn't want us to take care of our bodies, because when our bodies aren't optimized, we can't communicate with God and worship as well. We can't make good decisions. So, but the leading medical societies recommend lifestyle medicines, and then people always ask me, well, what are some of the lifestyle changes? Well, here's just a small list. But each of the ways to bring down blood pressure depends on a person's needs. But just avoiding any stress in general. If you're if you have a stressful drive to work, go a different way. If something's stressing you at night, someone's bothering you, try to get rid of it. If you can. Any type of stress makes adrenaline and cortisol, no matter what that stress is coming from. Avoid stimulants. The worst ones I see are chemicals like Red Bull, chemicals like too much caffeine. Alcohol is a big one. A lot of people like to drink beer. As soon as they quit drinking beer, their blood pressure comes right down. Okay? I don't think that's a big problem in this group. But you know what? That's a need for other people. And when other people find this out, say, listen, I love you, but this might be causing a problem for you. I just want you to know about it. Because I love you enough to tell you the truth. How many people in this world love someone enough to tell them the truth? We want to avoid controversy. We don't want to step on anyone's toes, right? We don't want to do that. But that's not the way of the Bible, right? Christ presented truth in love, but he gave the ultimate solution, and he provided the ultimate solution. So alcohol, nicotine, decreased sodium, that's a big one. If people can go more towards a plant-based diet, get rid of fatty foods, get rid of all that sodium processed foods, the fat. Exercise is a big one. I can't tell you how many people don't want to walk an hour a day, okay? But exercise, movement, even if you can't move that much, at least get out of the chair and walk around the room every hour. That's a big player. It does lots of other things besides lower blood pressure. Then we have all the nutritional interventions. I mentioned the greens. Flax lowers blood pressure. Hibiscus, watermelon, kiwi, grains. Almost any plant-based food will lower the blood pressure to some degree. Almost any processed food raises the blood pressure to some degrees. That's just some of the lifestyle changes. And I tell someone, listen, they say, well, what would you do, number one? I go, well, what's on that list you think you can start with? Everyone can take some deep breaths 3 times a day. That can help stress. Everyone can maybe cut back on some of the stimulants. Maybe you could do that. Maybe you could cut back on eating out. I have some people that will eat out and eat processed foods 3 times a day. They don't eat anything real anymore. And everyone can do better on movement. So we'll try to find some common places they can do. But remember, lifestyle focuses on the cause of hypertension. Well, as modern medicine focuses on the symptoms. So if you're focusing on the symptoms and not on the cause, it never goes away. And it's going to get bigger over time. That's why we have this chronic healthcare dilemma. And I think people now, more than ever, are looking for answers. They're looking for places to go where they can hear truth. They realize that the medical industry doesn't necessarily do what's right all the time. They're looking for answers. Even in the Adventist church, our own health ministry, sometimes we've been lacking. We sometimes focused on the nutrition, and we made it so negative that we don't focus on the power. Christ is the key to health. If you have Christ, you're going to be healed. And He's through the power of the Holy Spirit. He's going to take you on your path in your time. But that's where the strength comes on. That's what we need to get back to. That's what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. So, is there a place for medications? Yes. When do I use medications? Well, if lifestyle changes fail, or people just don't want to do them. Some people just have bad genetics. They just have bad genes. Blood pressure's in the family. They're never going to get it down. Now, that's a minority, but there's some like that. And there's certain medical conditions that they really need medications. Kidney disease is one of them where you need some medication. Bad heart disease. Sometimes you have to bring the blood pressure down so the heart doesn't have to push against that pressure. But most of the people I get are the ones that have had high blood pressure for so long that it's worn out the organs. We want to catch it early. And this is something that everyone can do. You don't need a doctor, a physician, or provider to do this yourself. You can go get a blood pressure cuff. You can check it at home. If it's starting to come up high, you can start doing these things that are on this list to lower your blood pressure. So the guidelines, Journal of Medical, they're up to the JNC 8 guidelines, and it talks about every medication under the book. Okay? And I use medications when appropriate, and I just wanted to just stop right there. This is the Bible study that I'm going to leave with you. It's called Biblical Prescriptions for Life. And I'm going to leave a bunch of those with you along with the disc. And this is something you might want to do in your church family to work through some of these things with chronic disease with first the church family themselves. And then if that works well and you think it's good, then you might want to take it to your friends and neighbors with this approach. This book teaches biblical techniques based on worship. It's not converting someone to doctrine. It's converting them to the truths of the Bible. We're going to talk about this tomorrow. The WOG, the Word of God, which leads us to the CTK, which is Christ the King, which is the key to healing and health. So I'm going to stop there. I know it's getting late, and I know everyone's a little bit, probably a little bit tired tonight. Before I close in prayer, is there some burning questions that would be appropriate for the whole group? If you don't want to talk about the whole group, I will be here afterwards, and I'll answer your individual question as well. Does anyone have like a burning question about hypertension? And we're going to have a lot more time for questions tomorrow afternoon. On Sabbath, I'm going to start talking about the solution to chronic disease issues that we have. And I think you know which direction we're going. And then I'm going to spend some time if anyone might have some specific needs that I can help them with, as well as introduce the church to some ideas that they might want to consider to reach the community with planting seeds of the gospel with health ministry, that we can plant some seeds so when the Holy Spirit wants to grow them, He can grow them here. Listen, this is a group that told me the truth in love. They tried to meet my needs. This is the way they did it. Now there's so many different ways that they can do this. I have one church that all they do is pray. That's all they do. They pray for the community. And that's valuable. I have another church that I work with that they started an internet site where they have a YouTube channel and they post videos on it every week, you know. And if they have any serious health problems, they send them to me because I'm part of their congregation too. Remember, we're all part of a mighty team here, okay? And now with social media and everything that links, it's very easy to be linked with everyone all over the world, whether we want to or not. So we can do that. Any questions before I close in prayer?
Is autophagy a good way to start to lower the blood pressure?
What?
Autophagy.
What do you mean when you say autophagy?
It's like if you're going to fast.
Well, that is one way. Intermittent fasting can lower blood pressure, but you want to really, what I try to do is, first I make sure there's been no damage to the body from the blood pressure, see what it really is, and then I start on the list of things after I talk to the person, things that I would think will help them the most. Okay? Intermittent fasting is on that list. It's not the highest on the list. For most people, it's nutrition, exercise, and making sure they don't have a chronic medical problem. That, when it gets to that, then yes, people can do that, but it doesn't lower blood pressure as much as some of these other items. Now, some people say, I'm already plant-based, I'm exercising an hour a day, I don't have stress, I don't have pain, I'm drinking enough water every day, I don't have sleep apnea, I don't have kidney disease. Then those people, then we start doing these other things like intermittent fasting. We try to add those things, special nutritional intervention. Well, why don't you take some beet powder every morning with your smoothie? Why don't you take three scoops of salad or greens 3 times a day? Those other things. And then once you advance through those, if you still have high blood pressure, then we talk about the risk and benefits of the medication. But you have to, there's about 20 different things you would work down on first that would lower it more effectively. Yeah, so intermittent fasting is one of those. Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm a vegan. I work out 5 days a week. I walk 4 to 5 miles a day. I take 10 grams of lisinopril a day, and I still test around 130.
Well, that's not too bad. Not too bad. Some people, like I said, some people just genetically have it. And some people, but lisinopril is one of the safer medications that we have. Very few side effects from that. Amlodipine is also a very effective medicines. But some people say, well, is there anything I can do to tighten it up? Well, I make sure you're drinking enough water every day. I see dehydration, sometimes mist. I make sure there's no hidden stimulants, hidden stressors. We might add breathing deeply 3 times a day or taking some downtime. Making sure you have some people just have too much going on all the time. And some people, I get them to just sort of, relax more, vacations, more downtime, and that also helps with blood pressure. But some people do all of those things in their lives, and they need to take a little medicine. Then we substitute the medicine with the least amount of side effects. Lisinopril has very few side effects. 130/70, that's not a bad blood pressure. That's a good blood pressure. If you have a 130/70, you're doing all those things, I'd say praise God. And then if you wanted to work on some other things, that would be out there. But sometimes people find those other things that they don't intuitively work for them, for whatever reason,
Well, it's in my family. My mother
Yeah.
died,
And you might just have it in your family. You might have hardening of the arteries in the family. But when I say rusting, sometimes people the arteries that rusting, what helps those the most, and we check those with a coronary calcium score. We think the arteries are rusting. The things that help the most is greens, plants, beets, things, eating real foods, and exercise. Those things help. And then sometimes people do all of those, and the arteries still get stiff. And those people probably do benefit from medications. Okay, any other questions? But the big point is high blood pressure is a chronic disease, and this is a chronic disease that you can take control of. Yes, sir?
You said something about not eating out very often.
Yeah.
Is there any place that's less harmful than another?
Well, yes, if you can find them. But remember, you want to find places that will serve salads, okay, fresh foods, and not a lot of packaged foods, fried foods, greasy stuff, that kind of thing. And you have to be very selective in the places you go out at. We were in, what city were we in? We said, man, we were just longing for salad on this trip, so we went and had, it was Olive Garden. We went to Olive Garden, and all they had was salads. So we had big salads at Olive Garden. But yeah, there are some places to go. But you have to be creative with it because, a lot of them aren't serving fresh food. So most people, they eat out less and they make their own food more if they have these hypertension problems.
We do have a restaurant in Edina called Cucumbers.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Big, long salad bar.
Yeah, so salads, those sorts of salads are really good, and those are some things that people can do. And there's some other. I'm not saying that that's the only one. There's other types of foods that aren't processed to death that you can sometimes find, but it's hard. One of the ones I noticed here in Minnesota a lot is one called Culver's.
Yeah.
Have you heard of that one?
Yeah.
Now that one's probably good to make you happy with some ice cream, but you wouldn't want to do that place over and over. But they did have one salad that my wife had that wasn't too bad. It was a salad they had on it, so they do have it, but it's harder. You know, and we found out ourselves personally, it's just easier to make it at home. But when you travel, you know, special circumstances, you got to do it the best you can. But you know, if you do, one thing that's helped me out a lot is if you do eat bad food, go on a short walk afterwards. Go on a short walk. Try not to eat big at night. Okay? So if you are going to do it, and then if you do eat something bad, try to chase it with some fiber and water. Fiber and water helps move it through the GI tract quicker, so the bad stuff is not absorbed as fast.
I got one more.
Yes, sir.
My wife and her sisters, you almost have to put a funnel in them to get water in them.
Yeah.
They say they are not thirsty. I feel I'm thirsty all the time.
Yeah.
But they don't
No,
feel
some people don't have that big thirst, and some people just have to sort of make themselves drink water. But yeah, it's hard because it's been estimated that 75% of people don't get enough water every day. So they're dehydrated to some degree. When you're dehydrated to some degree, your body makes adrenaline, cortisol, and all of them, guess what it does? It drives up your blood pressure. So God made us 70% water, and sometimes, you know, sometimes flavored water, but sometimes you have to drink it even if you don't want it. Now, I have a big prostate, so I try not to drink big at night because I have to get up in the middle of the night, and that stresses me out. And that's so you got to sort of balance it out. So I try to drink my water when I'm not speaking more in the morning. But tomorrow I will go a little dehydrated. Because what you don't want is you don't want Dr. MARCUM to be drinking too much in the morning and be talking to you about, you know, chronic disease up front. So, whoops, can we just hold on the sermon while I run back there to the bathroom real quick? Those with big prostates know what I'm talking about. You know, and unfortunately that's sort of a genetic thing that we sort of have to manage the best we can. So, yes, sir.
One more.
Sure.
Her oldest sister is turning 90 tomorrow, I think it is. And you can almost sit on her and pour water in it, otherwise she doesn't drink anymore. How does the body survive without
it doesn't do as well. Remember, God has made our body pretty resilient.
Yeah.
I've seen our bodies take a lot. And you just think about walking in the desert. You know, at first the person's a little bit thirsty, then after a while they start seeing mirages and things, and finally they pass out. You know, but you really have to, people that don't have that thirst, especially once we get older, sometimes we lose that. We have to really make ourselves, and those that don't, you know, sometimes the memory's not as good, we have to encourage them to drink water, and if they don't do it, say, hey, I'm going to make you do it, you know, because you have to do this. Because if you don't do this, some bad things are going to happen. And we don't want that. And I've seen too many people that what will happen is they won't drink water, but they'll take 5 medications.
Yeah.
And then a little bit of medications become a lot when you're dehydrated because your kidney function changes. So you don't get rid of the medicines. So a 5 milligram dose becomes a 50 milligram dose when you're dehydrated. So it's a double whammy. So that's something that everyone can work on to some degree, is to drink some water. You know, and everyone talks about what type of water we should drink. Just drink water, period. Whatever God gives us to drink, drink it. Okay? We noticed the water here in Minnesota is very good. Very good. I even drank it out of the lake. I drank it out of the headwaters of the Mississippi, Lake Itasca. I drank the water there. It was fine. I drank that just a couple of days ago. It's good water, good fresh water.
That's interesting how that river starts.
Yes, it is. It is. You never guess it's so big as it goes on. That's been a very interesting. I like to learn about different things, and that's been very interesting. But we were surprised when we went to St. Cloud. Has anyone been over to that rose garden over there? That is that's one of the most beautiful gardens that my wife has ever seen. I'm not a big rose person, but Sonia is an expert in roses. She said it was beautiful. But what I noticed is the hydro plant is a little bit small compared to us in Tennessee. We have these big, Tennessee Valley Authority. We put these big water plants about every 5 miles. It makes all of our electricity. All of our electricity. Yours, and even the one in Minneapolis, that's sort of a wussy one. They should put a big one up so you make lots of electricity. Because I bet you it gets cold here in the winter. Now, does the Mississippi freeze in the winter?
Yeah, some places.
Some of that. Okay. And has anyone here been ice fishing? I read about that. Yeah.
Yeah, fish will pull it out on the lake with my truck.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's amazing. And I guess the most popular fish in Minnesota is walleye. I've learned a lot about Minnesota. Now, we have been all over the place. What was that place where they make the shoes? Red Wing. Now, that was a pretty little town. Red Wing was nice over there. So, now, we were at Dakota Lakes. We went to Dakota. Has anyone been up to Dakota Lakes? I think we went for a long time. We were to Dakota Lakes, and then we went over to Moorhead and then Fargo. Then we came back down that way. And we spent some time in Minneapolis, St. Paul area, that area. So. And the Mayo Clinic is great. If anyone gets really sick, the Mayo Clinic here, I've always loved the Mayo Clinic here. And actually, I took some exams, so I visited the Mayo Clinic a couple of days ago just to visit. But the way they take care of people that are sick is a great model. You know, they keep you there till they make a diagnosis, they get everyone there. In the South, you know, you go see the doctor, he'll say, oh, let me get these tests, he'll order those tests, he'll get those tests, he'll call you on the phone, or maybe not, or say, you have to come back in. A month later, he comes back in and gives a test, then you say, oh, now you need to do this. It just drags on forever. Yeah. Oh, now you need to see this specialist, and you know, if you have a serious problem, who wants to do that? But the Mayo Clinic doesn't do that at all. And 91,000 people in Rochester work for the Mayo Clinic. 91,000. 91,000. Yeah. And we noticed that they've taken care of the cold weather. They have these little places where you can walk between buildings. So you don't even have to get out in cold. Now, I could do that. You don't ever have to get out in cold. You can live over here, and you can walk to work through these windows. And there's even places you can buy things along the way. And it's pretty, Rochester's pretty cool. Yeah.
All those things in Minneapolis, tubes.
Yeah, tubes. Okay.
In Minneapolis, you can walk the whole entire thing.
Oh, really?
Skyways.
Now, we did go to Minnesota Twins. We went to Twins baseball game. I like baseball, so we went to Twins baseball.
Watch them lose.
Yeah, they lost. They lost, but I like the Twins because I used to collect baseball cards, and one of my favorite players of all time was that guy that had the big muscles for the Minnesota Twins.
Herbert?
No, before him.
Harmon Killebrew?
Harmon Killebrew.
Oh, Killebrew.
Killebrew, Olivia, and Mudcat Grant was good. Mudcat Grant used to have a mustache like yours. Mudcat Grant, he did. So he had a very fancy mustache too. So, but yeah, I just been in baseball. And we went by that fancy stadium, the football stadium. Yeah, that's an architectural marvel. I'm divulging. I'm sorry. I'm supposed to quit. So now you forgot about what we talked about. We talked about hypertension and God healing hypertension. Let's end in prayer. Father, thank you for each person here as we enter the Sabbath. We want to feel the joy that you've given us as a family, as ways we can learn to share and meet people's needs in our community. Bring us back all tomorrow, Father, and help us to worship and feel close to you and feel the Holy Spirit in a remarkable way is our prayer. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for coming here.